What up, players? It's WarbossTae up in this mug. It is Friday, and that means that it is time for another episode of my series, Fireforge Fridays, where we're taking a look at the resin figures for the Mongol range of Fireforge Games miniatures to be used with their Deus Vult system. And on Fridays, I'm going to unbox them, we're going to show them off, and on Mondays, I'm going to show off the painted figures for Mongol Mondays. I hope you come back and join us for that one, because this week we've got a great product to unbox and review. It is the Mongol Heavy Cavalry Lancer kit. You've got 4 resin horses and riders, as well as a sprue of plastic lances. And for those of you who've worked with resin figures before, especially resin figures that have long lances, pikes, spears, long weapons like staffs, anything like that, you will know that more often than not, a danger of using resin is that the chances are your weapon will come out bent or warped or just almost perfectly straight, and then the end is a little wonky looking and janky. The great thing about using plastic, Fireforge's decision to use plastic, is that it remains strong, straight, and consistent. They all look the same. So I hope that's something that other wargame manufacturers, miniatures manufacturers, takes into account, that if you're making resin figures, maybe it might be a good idea to cast the weapons in plastic, especially if they're long like this, and if they are all supposed to be consistent. So let's take a look at the resin figures. Again, also you've got 2 sets of these bases, cavalry bases, one larger one or 2 larger ones for putting 2 on one, or maybe just doing 1 and doing some creative basing, and single ones to put single miniatures on for ease of, I guess, taking the models off while you're playing. So you've got the lances, you've got 2 sets of those bases. Let's take a look at the figures. I basically just cut open the clamshell and paired them up and lined them up. The reason I did that is because you will notice, hopefully you'll notice, 2 of these horses, the ones at the bottom, are in full charge at the enemy mode. They're leaning a little bit forward. You can see their front legs are a little bit bent. The back legs are a little bit straighter, almost like they're leaning into a charge. And these 2 in the back are at more of a trot or a canter. So when I'm thinking about how I'm going to be building these guys up, I'm thinking of putting the 2 charging ones on the ends, like that, and the 2 trotting ones at the center. And that's so that anybody who looks at the model from any direction a table away will see the charging ones first. And I think that's a good way to do it. And then you've got the 4 riders. And I've noticed that for the charging ones, you can fit these guys on. They sit really nicely. But because of the way they are built, you see how the horse is charging, the guy's leaning forward. Because of that, these 2 charging horses and riders are made specifically for those horses. And if you try to put them on these guys in the back, they don't sit as good. Well, this one's okay. Was it this one? One of them, it looked like he was kind of floating above the saddle. At least that's just my my experience of trying to pair these guys up. I think it was this one. So not completely interchangeable. Also, you'll notice there's a little bit of extra stuff molded there, and I found that really fits this one rider who's got his leg, who's kind of like braced up against it while he's riding, and he's sitting back a little bit more to fit on the saddle. So, and I was like, what is that? And then I noticed, oh, it's because he's supposed to sit like that. There we go. Rather than try to glue him to the saddle where his legs could also be, and then he's kind of like Alibaba floating on above the saddle there. Okay, so yeah, just want to match them up. Now let's take a look at the actual horses and the riders. The horses are just like the ones I reviewed last week. They're all wearing these large blankets of armor to protect their bodies and leaving the bottom open so that their legs have range of movement and they're free to move. So enemy archers who are trying to shoot at these horses will have a very hard time hitting them. And these horses look great because they're completely different from the light cavalry. If you look at the plastic kits from Fireforge for the Mongol light cavalry, you'll see that they look very much like naked, unarmored horses, and that is so that they have range of like mobility, and they're able to be a lot faster. These are definitely made to look like they're heavy, beefy, chunky, ready to go in for the charge, and that's why they're so heavily armored. You'll also notice that Fireforge was really good at historical details, and I'm reading up on the Mongols. You might have remembered me saying that last episode, and I'm able to, learning about all the equipment they used on campaign, pick out a lot of what some of these details are. For example, the digging tool here for digging camp at the end of the day, and the packs that they would use to hold their clothes and equipment, food, and the flasks that they would use to hold their kumis, or their fermented, there's like an alcoholic drink made out of fermented, I guess, fermented milk. And I think one of the coolest things about reading about it is how they would have this, their iron rations were like this millet meal or dried meat. They would put it under their saddles. I think I mentioned this last week. And while they were riding, with the meat under the saddle, by the time they stopped to rest, the meat would be softened and it would be good to eat. And also, they would have this powdered milk that, I guess, dried milk curd, and they would put it into these flasks. It wouldn't be powdered, hello, it would be dried. So they had these dried milk curd that they'd be able to transport and carry, and on the day they would want to drink it, they would put it into these flasks and add some water. And with the horse trotting up and down all day, it kind of sloshes it like a shaker, and then they would have this kind of watery, milky yogurt drink, this watery yogurt. So I love reading up on the history of these guys. I think it's great that they pack so much detail into them, and that now we, hundreds of years later, can look back and say, oh, I know what this is about. I know what the shields are made of. I know that they would wear these plumes on their helmets made out of horsehair, stuff like that. So the detail on these guys are that they're similar to last week's models that we looked at. They've got their bows strapped to their hips, so there's no extra bow and quiver for me to have to find a place to glue on the models, and that's fine. You can see that the models themselves look different to the models we had from last week, and very well sculpted. The shields look really, really cool as well. And I love how you can see the back of his armor on his helmet is flaring, like the wind is rippling through that. The horsehair is flowing back like he's charging straight forward, really leaning into the charge there. So I love the sculpts of these models. I think they're really great. I'm noticing there are some mold lines and flash pieces of extra resin that I have to clean off and trim, like right here under the elbow. Just gonna go in there with a hobby knife and very, very carefully trim that down, but nothing that ruins features. There's no missing noses. There's no, shifts in the mold to make the model look unusable. Any mold lines are very easily cleaned. Any flash or extra resin pieces are very easily trimmed off. They're easy to see and they're easy to trim off. So there's nothing that ruins the detail of what's going to make these models fun to paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off and I'm actually going to build them up. And then for the end of this video, I'll show you what they look like all built up, maybe motivate you to see, or kind of use your imagination to see what they're going to look like when they're finally painted. And then we'll do a little wrap up, so stay tuned. And through the magic of technology, we have returned. And you can see that I've built up my models here, and I've put them on their bases. So I just want to talk to you really quickly about that. I have not put any of the basing material. Usually at this point, I would have put basing material on, glued that on. But I just wanted to show you what the Fireforge resin miniatures look like without them. And let's take a look at the models. I did have some mold lines to clean up and some flash to clip off, like I said in the previous part of this video. But once that was all done, they came together really, really nicely. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the sculpted base that the models come on, which you put onto the plastic bases. The thing that I love about these more than I had before was that you have a large surface area to put the super glue on. So once you put that onto the plastic base, they really don't come off. And it allows the sculptor to do some interesting and dynamic things connecting the model to the sculpted base. So you'll see that I clipped off the flash connecting the feet to the bases, and this guy's still drying, so I'm not going to tilt him too much. I put the guys holding the lances down on these single bases. That's what I decided to do in the end. First, I thought it'd be interesting to mix and match them and have one of these guys on the larger base. But then I thought, oh, what if I want to expand my Mongol army? I can get maybe 3 more boxes of these heavy cavalry guys. And once you line them up, depending on how wide the formations are, I haven't read the Deus Vult rule set yet, you can have a nice big chunky block where you've got guys lances down in the front and guys lances up in the back. And I think that looked pretty cool. Or you can even make a really wide line formation and do something like that. I think that looks pretty awesome itself. What I decided to do with the horses, and this is another reason why I like having free models to put onto the base wherever you want, is I tried to put this guy a little bit farther behind on the base so that I can have somebody with a lance on the horse at the close front end of the base coming forward and create a little bit of a mix and match. With these guys, it's not such a big deal. With the archers, I felt it was really important because you've got the guy that was sitting in the center aiming his bow to the left, and it looked like he was kind of shooting at this horse if you don't place this horse far behind and this guy close to the front. Or vice versa, if this guy is far behind on the base, then you have this guy in the front, and you can kind of really create your own individual looking regiment. You can even angle the horses on the base so that they're facing in a different direction. If you want it to look like your guys are charging a larger unit, like they're meant to really fan out, you can have these 2 guys on the ends facing like away from the center, like they're purposely charging the ends and forcing the enemy to bunch up to the center while they're charging. Create some really cool cinematic looking things. And even if that's not a game mechanic, I think that's a cool way to think about it, that these guys were specifically formed for that unit. Or maybe these guys are a special shock heavy cavalry unit that their specialty is charging straight forward and creating the guys in the front are creating a tunnel through which the guys in the back are going to funnel and spear down or whatever. I think there's so many ways you can look at the wargaming, I guess, the background and the way that the game plays and everything, that the rules are really just there to help you spur your imagination and create guidelines for how you're going to play your games. What I love about these figures is when they're finally built up and when you're getting ready to paint them, it should spur your imagination. You should really feel motivated to paint them. And with these miniatures, I feel motivated to paint them, just like with any model from any range where you have to build them up and put them together. These guys look great, they come together really well, and I love that I'm able to share them with you guys. So once again, these are the Mongol Heavy Cavalry Lancers from Fireforge Games to be used with their Deus Vult game system. You can check them out at fireforge-games.com. You can order your miniatures there. I hope you do. I hope you support this game because the models look really great, and I would love to see more of them represented, especially in our YouTube community. But yeah, if you can get the word out in your local area and say, hey, you guys should really look into this historical war game, 28 millimeters. I think it'd be great to just grow this section of our community. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on Monday for Mongol Monday, where I will hopefully, fingers crossed, have these guys all based and painted up and ready to go. Thanks again for watching. This is WarbossTae. If you're interested in more of my work, you can visit me on Facebook and Twitter at WarbossTae, and also check out my website and my commission studio if you'd like me to paint up something for you at WarbossTaeStudios.com or WarbossTaeStudios, all one word, WarbossTaeStudios at gmail.com. Latest, players!